set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to break up so I can make a better me. Better believe in your mind, cause it's everything.
Since the beginning of time, the snake or the serpent has always gotten a bad rap. But it has not always been that way. Things are not as they appear. An animal with the soul of a human. They've always represented mostly as being an adversary of mankind. But actually, back in the day, in the beginning, even in Genesis, the snake was not considered evil, or the serpent. The snake or the serpent represents wisdom and knowledge. The snake or the serpent is slithery, it's slick, it's very cool usually. They're scaly, they're silent, they're stealthy, and they represent like spiritual knowledge and enlightenment. And they shed. So the shedding of the skin is considered like constant renewal and rebirth, vitality and rejuvenation. Sometimes the snake is seen as a phallic symbol. But today I want to talk to you about the Anunnaki god, Enki, and the Brotherhood of the Snake. Now, the Brotherhood of the Snake was formed by Enki, who was part of the Anunnaki triad. It was Anu, Enki, and Enlil. The Brotherhood of the Snake is the oldest secret society on the planet Earth. Hundreds of thousands of years ago. Long time before we ever heard the words Illuminati. Their goal was to bring about spiritual knowledge and enlightenment, and basically to free us. So I'm going to go back to the garden. I'm going to give you a little bit of background here. Or Enki, was the Sumerian god of wisdom, the god of fresh water, the god of intelligence, trickery and mischief, craft and magic, god of exorcism, god of healing, god of creation, god of virility, fertility, and god of art. Now, his symbols were the fish and the goat. Enki was deified and worshipped in the very first city on earth, Eridu. He was their patron god, and those were the Akkadians, and they called him E-A, but his Sumerian name was Enki. Now, Anu was Enki's dad, and Enki had several children. Most notable would be Marduk. So the Anunnaki began to experiment with genetic engineering, and that's how we got the modern Homo sapiens sapien, or modern man. The Enki and Anu, they come down here. The Agigi, they're slaves that was mining gold and minerals for them. They rebelled. I'm not a scientist, so I'm not sure what stage we were in, but my guess would be, we might not even seen fire yet. As far as I know, the Anunnaki might have been who brought fire to the caveman. Who knows? But Enki and Enlil, they're, being geneticists, and they're messing with DNA, and they're trying to create the perfect slave. They need slaves. Well, they would get a little bit closer. Each failure would get them a step closer, but they couldn't reproduce. So they were working these people to death. Well, supposedly Inky and Enlil's sister, Anana, took one of the, like, zygotes or whatever you would call them, the clones or whatever, and she carried it to term, and that was Adam. Now, Lilith was created at the same time. They probably were like Adam was in a petri dish, Lilith was in a petri dish. But Anana, carried Adam to term. Well, Lilith was, a spitfire. She was a feminist, and she wouldn't lay down on her back for Adam to have his way. And she left the garden, and eventually, they needed to give Adam a woman. They needed to breed him like a horse or a buck. That's the way they were doing them. The Garden of Eden was actually Edin, and Enlil created it. It was actually an outside laboratory, a genetics laboratory, where they were breeding these experimental humanoids, just like service animals, like an expensive dog. They were trying all these combinations. Well, they finally got it right with Adam and Lilith, but Lilith, went off to do her own thing and caught a bunch of flack for it and got demonized. But anyway, I'm getting off track here already. So they went back and they took some bone marrow from Adam's ribs, some DNA, and they created Eve. And since she came out of Adam, she was subservient, and Adam loved her, and they had some kids. So Enlil was the god in the garden. This was his slave breeding farm. And he wanted to keep man dumb, because he had him in the garden, had him thinking they was in paradise, telling them he had free will, but really they didn't. The serpent snuck in and tempted Eve, who went and took the fruit to Adam and brought about the fall of man. So it was just like a domino effect. Now, the serpent, according to this story, the serpent was Enki, Enlil's brother. Because, he was part of their creator. He was a geneticist. They were early human origin architects. So they're creating these experiments. But Enki liked man. And he didn't, all the other slaves, they kept them dumb. They worked them to death. They beat them. And that's why they revolted. So I'm not sure if Enki, turned into a serpent or if that is metaphoric for the symbolism of the serpent and spiritual enlightenment and liberation. But anyway, they ate, now enter consciousness. So Enki supposedly took on the form of a serpent, or that's how the story was told. But Enki tempted Eve and told her, you won't die. You'll be like us. You'll know right and wrong, and you'll know all these things, and you can have a consciousness. Well, after they eat, they was woke. They they woke up. They had a spiritual awakening. So Enlil was furious with Enki because now Adam and Eve were conscious. And they realized that they were equal, if not above, those that created. Enlil couldn't have that. He done kicked Enki out the garden again or whatever, but he couldn't have two woke slaves in his slave camp because that was like a deadly plague. If, it would have spread through the slaves like wildfire, like a virus. Consciousness would have. They would have been more and more waking up every day, and then he was scared they would revolt because of the crappy way that he treated them. We got two brothers here who are fighting, like seriously fighting. Now, whether he had started the Brotherhood of the Snake before Adam and Eve ate of the fruit, I'm not sure. I really couldn't find that information. Either way, though, it's the oldest secret society, especially for spiritual knowledge, on the planet. Hundreds of thousands of years older than any other secret society before we had even learned the word Illuminati. But the mission of the Brotherhood of the Snake was to wake up and bring to higher consciousness mankind. Inky, he helped create the slaves, but he's trying to treat them right. Well, after this happened, Enlil was furious and, threw him out of the garden and down to earth. Are we seeing a pattern yet, y'all? So the Brotherhood of the Snake was formed by Inky. Their symbol is a tree with two fruits on it. It's got the half moon for Inky. It's got the disc and earth and all that for Anu. Now, Inky tried to teach man spiritual liberation and, ascension and knowledge. And Inky's the god of wisdom. So, he was doing what, he's the god of wisdom. He was doing it. But a lot of scholars have, they speculate that Inky was actually Samael, and Inky and Samael character was actually Lucifer. Enlil ended up basically gifting his kingship or godship to Marduk. Marduk became Baal, which means Lord, and that became Baal, I think. And then I'm pretty sure they became that Marduk became Yahweh or Jehovah, and that was the Old Testament God. That Marduk moved up from Babylon to taking over the Hebrews or the Israelites. Now, Inky was a genius, but he was careless. He was mischievous, and he liked to play tricks on people. He was just like a fun-loving guy. But he starts this brotherhood to try to, spiritually uplift these slaves that they've created. Well, his brotherhood of spiritual enlightenment turned into a brotherhood of spiritual betrayal. So, even as far back as Genesis, they didn't equate the serpent with evil. But there's a lot of dragons and a lot of serpents or snakes mentioned in the Bible, plus a lot of other religious texts, ancient and non-canonical. Seraph, the word seraph for seraphim. Seraph means to burn or destroy. And in the Old Testament, you had fiery serpents and dragons everywhere. You can find them in Numbers, all through Numbers. You can find them in Deuteronomy 8:15. You can find them in the third book of Enoch. So, and also the Christ said, "Be thee therefore wise as serpents, but as meek as lambs," and that's in Matthew 10:16. So the serpent has been used way, way back. The serpent is also associated with the underworld. You have the big, I think it's called Apsu or something. I can't remember its name, but it's the world serpent. And Amun Ra and Seth, battle it every night so they can bring the sun up every morning on the boat. But that it's also associated with your subconscious state. It was called the Naga, a seven-headed serpent that the Buddhas talked about. And within the serpent symbiology, the serpent is comprised of all four elements. And if that's balanced out, it'll bring about the fifth element, which is spirit. A lot of other things have been associated with the serpent. The Kundalini energy, the duality, the singularity. And the Kundalini energy, there's supposedly two coiled serpents at the base of your spine. And that, you activate your Kundalini, and that activates your prana. The Kundalini energy is about healing and learning and rebirth and revitalization. Now, and this is where they come up with like the caduceus, however you say it, have the two intertwined snakes around the caduceus shaft, or the rod of caduceus. It's used in medicine still today. So basically, since back in the day, in the beginning, the serpent's always been associated with wisdom and secret knowledge and secret societies. But, you know, Inky's purpose with this brotherhood was to awaken mankind. You know, he really, they call it the fall of mankind, but I don't see where we fell too far. We were enslaved. You know, Adam and Eve woke up, they became conscious, you know, higher functioning, higher conscious, higher vibrating beings, you know. And he helped awaken all that wisdom and knowledge so that they could express their higher consciousness. He wanted man to know about rebirth and renewal. But brother turned on brother, and that's when, you know, Enlil had to scramble after the plague of consciousness hit Adam and Eve, and he had to save the rest of his slaves, and he had to scramble, and that's where your organized, misleading religion comes in. I'm not talking about following God or loving God. I'm talking about religion. There's actually like deliverance ministers put a wicked spirit on the religion spirit. You can have the spirit of religion, but not be spiritual at all. Even Eden's serpent wasn't evil. He just told them the truth. He really does. I think he done mankind a favor in a way. You know, they call it the fall of man, but keeping us dumb and keeping us as slaves and using us like, you know, breeding stock wasn't getting us anywhere. At least we had a chance awake, and that's what Inky did for mankind. So, in conclusion, brother went to war with brother. Enlil cast Inky out of the garden for being the serpent in the garden who tempted Adam and Eve to bring about the fall. But I'd like to have your opinion in the comment section, if you will. Was it the fall of mankind, or did it actually advance mankind because it woke us up? And the Brotherhood of the Snake was a secret organization, secret society started by Inky to raise consciousness on the planet and to share spiritual wisdom, enlightenment, help us on our ascension path, and help us to achieve spiritual liberation. But apparently, snakes are pretty hardy because this secret society is still around today. But it's a secret. A lot of high magic workers and enlightened people are probably members. I think it would be pretty cool. I might try to find a chapter and see what I can learn. So, moral of the story, have the high vibrating, bright, loving serpent within you take over the dark, calculating, cunning one. And we have a lot we can learn from a serpent. I hope this video helped you some. I hope, if nothing else, you learned something today. Remember to lift each other up in prayer. And thank you for watching. Please hit that like button and put us out in that algorithm so somebody else might could see this video. Thank you for being here. Have a wonderful week. Namaste.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to break up so I can make a better me. Better believe in your mind, cause it's everything. You can mold, shape, vibe